is a little new for us. We're figuring all this out, but we really wanted to jump on in this time. We have done a presentation similar to this many times called Building an Emotionally Healthy Home. And we've never done it on Zoom before. We've never done it live online. We've done it in person. We've actually done this presentation at different conferences. And so we're very excited. And we just...
multiple versions. Like sometimes we have longer, sometimes we have shorter.
That's true.
Sometimes it's an audience. But you know, the thing is that even though it's gone to a bunch of different audiences, it's gone to foster care, it's gone to kinship care, it's gone to parents. Parents are parents, you know what I mean? And we all have a great deal of love for our kids. There's nothing we wouldn't do for them. And so there's kind of a, you know, it is what it is. So anyways, we're happy to be here with you guys. And I think we can kind of get started.
Yeah. And so just in welcoming, what we wanted to do is it was really on our heart to come and do this presentation online now, because we are in a situation. We are sheltering at home in place, right?
Yeah.
And so we felt like, wow, this is a really important message that we wanted to get out there, because all of us right now are experiencing a collective trauma.
Yeah.
We really are. There's a lot of losses that we're experiencing right now. And the definition of grief, this is one of my favorites, is conflicting feelings that is caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. So all of us are experiencing that in many ways, and we're even experiencing it collectively. So one of the messages that we wanted to have right off the bat is to give grace to yourselves, to each other, to your kids, because there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of unsettling feelings right now that cause us. There was something I read about being foggy and wondering, how can you go from one extreme to the other within minutes?
Yeah.
Within minutes, I can feel good, and then I get the little notification on my phone, like a news notification, and that little sound is starting to become that, oh my gosh, what am I going to hear now? And so it's very easy to be conflicted. It's very conflicting. So we just wanted to bring you guys a message of hope. We wanted to give you guys some tools today. So we're very excited to jump in to this presentation, and we hope you guys get a lot out of it. And if you have any questions or any comments, please put them in the chat. We'll be manning that, and also at the end, we'll take any questions.
Yeah, the main thing is if you have those questions, we'll wait until the end to answer them. We will have, I promise, a dedicated Q&A, which is actually one of our favorite things, because then it gives us a chance to actually connect with you. So if you do have any questions, what I would do is jot them in the Q&A so that you don't forget them, and then we will literally go through and answer every single one of the questions in the Q&A. We promise. Yeah. So, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming. You know, the one thing is, no matter what is going on, one of the things that makes our life at home so challenging is that there's no real measurables. What do I mean by that? For example, you go to work, you finish a project, you hit the quota, you meet the deadline, you collect a bonus, you get a paycheck. Measurable. Emotional connection and engagement, not so much in the measurable department. You know, and that's one of the things that makes it so challenging, because relationships are very different. So how do we connect and engage with our spouses, with our kids? How do we navigate these relationships in a way that builds an emotionally healthy home? These are important questions, because many of us can feel like we are falling short in the relationships that matter most to us, our families, right? But what if we could share some principles with you that will transform your relationships at home? Because these will work even though our lives and our kids are at different stages in their development. So I just want to start off. Most of you we know, some of you we may not, so we're just going to be very brief in our introductions. But my wife and I, we co-founded Preparing Kids for Life because we want every parent to experience the joy of helping their kids become the very best version of themselves. And before that, I loved every minute of teaching high school for 14 years. I've authored 5 books, written several ebooks. I've been a featured educational conference, as I mispronounce education. I've been a featured educational conference speaker for the last 13 years and love that as well. My wife, she's been a certified grief recovery specialist for the last 16 years. I don't even know how many hundreds of people she has taken through that life-changing program. She's also been homeschooling our daughter for the last 11 years. So we've basically combined our expertise and experience to equip parents with the tools they need to connect and engage at home with their loved ones. So I'm going to let my wife share a little bit about her background, if you would, honey.
Yes. And so we thought it would be good to share a little bit about our background because our lives growing up didn't really equip us to be emotionally stable parents.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to just share a little bit about that, a little brief snapshot that I grew up in a house with alcoholism, a lot of codependent behaviors. There wasn't boundaries. There wasn't a lot of things put in place, like parameters. It was kind of an anything went, anything goes. And there was a lot of figuring things out on our own. My parents were very young when they had me and my sister. And so in a lot of ways, we all grew up together and we tried to just sort of navigate life. And for me, I developed addiction. I was an alcoholic, a very high functioning alcoholic. I was working and nobody had any idea how much I was struggling. And by the time I was all of my 20s, I had a very debilitating eating disorder that I would wrestle and struggle with for 10 years. And there was a lot of my life that I lived inside of a jail cell in my own body and mind. And I spent a lot of money and time on therapy. And a lot of that helped me, but nothing really helped me get down to the core of things until I went through the grief recovery program. And I saw such a dramatic change that's when I decided this is what I want to do. And I have been very, very grateful and lucky to do that work with people because my heart and what I guess I kind of bring into this with Dan is my heart is to see people set free from the things of their past, of their childhood, ways that they didn't really learn how to process emotions in a healthy way so that they can be present for their spouses and for their kids. And so that's really it's really a foundational part of preparing kids for life and how we kind of go about helping adults as they recover and get healthy and get healed. Healed is the word.
Yeah.
And
sure.
so that's so really there was a lot of figuring it out. And that has helped me tremendously.
Yeah. So, I mean, for myself, like Vicky's childhood, like probably many of you, I did not grow up in a perfect home. I did not have perfect parents. To make a long story short, I grew up with a lot of confusion and insecurity about whether I would ever be a good parent myself. I dealt with a lot of verbal and physical abuse. I pretty much thought of myself as worthless and what could I possibly have to offer anybody? And so my fears really came to a head when we were pregnant, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's bad enough I have all of this junk in myself. Now I'm going to just spew that into a completely innocent life and ruin them, right? And so when my daughter was born, I knew that I had to do something because I didn't want to give her a childhood she'd have to recover from, right? So I knew, and that tool ended up being grief recovery. And God used that tool to unlock things and to change things, to give me hope in that I did have something unique and special to bring to my daughter. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think at some point in our parenting, most of us have had a moment where we experienced the realization that our parents did the best they could with what they knew, right? Mm. But what if we could do better because we knew better, right? And so that's kind of become our mission, to equip parents to know better, to empower them to become confidently intentional as they prepare their kids for life and leave them a legacy of meaning and purpose. And so before we just even go one step further, I think that this is something that every parent needs to know about themselves right here, right now. You are a hero. You're a hero. What else would you call someone who is willing to pour their life into the life of another human being? So completely, so totally. A hero is the only word that seems big enough. And so it's important to remember that neither our struggles nor the struggles of our children define us in any way, shape, or form. And as the parent, you have an incredible opportunity to help them discover that they are destined for more, much more. Just like the eagle is designed to soar, children are designed to thrive. But how do we know that? Because the design reveals the destiny. Children are designed to thrive because they are born with the 5 characteristics necessary to succeed: enthusiasm, persistence, resilience, adventure, and faith. But if they aren't groomed in an emotionally healthy home, time and experience will diminish these characteristics until they just fade away. So let's explore this a little bit more by reviewing what God has to say about it. This is in Psalm 139. For you fashioned my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I thank you because I am awesomely made, wonderfully. Your works are wonders. I know this very well. My bones were not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes could see me as an embryo, but in your book, all my days were already written. My days had been shaped. You know, we're all made in God's image, and this is truly where our value comes from. This is our starting point. But we were also made with a purpose. You know, as the scripture talks about, we're all books with awesome and wonderful stories to tell. And our responsibility as parents is to help our children discover their own story to tell. You know, in Deuteronomy 6, this is what God tells us, the parents, to teach to our children about his power, his love, and his desire for us to love him with everything we have. And you are to love Adonai, your God, with all your heart, all your being, and all your resources. These words, which I am ordering you today, are to be on your heart, and you are to teach them carefully to your children. You are to talk about them when you sit at home, when you are traveling on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them on your hand as a sign. Put them at the front of a headband around your forehead and write them on the door frames of your house and on your gates. You know, and this command is so important that Jesus reinforces God's words from Deuteronomy is the foundation of literally everything else. And so he says this in Matthew, Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he, Jesus, said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and the first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets. You know, in Luke 6:40, we're told that a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. And this explains why the commands from Deuteronomy and Matthew are literally, absolutely the most important thing we will ever teach our kids about life. But this raises an important question. Who is teaching our children about life? And what are they learning about God, themselves, other people, and how life works? The answer to that question is whoever or whatever owns their time. I mean, do I even need to remind parents how fast the time goes? We have a newborn for a month, an infant for a year, a toddler for 2 years, a preschooler for 2 years, a child for 5 years, a preteen for 3 years, a teenager for 5 years, and then they're off. Those years are few and go by faster than you think. There is no more precious resource for a parent than time, which is exactly why it's so imperative we make the most of the short window of time that we have with our kids. So let's take a closer look at how much time we actually have with our kids. It may surprise you to discover that your window of influence is smaller than you think, much smaller. A child's life, K through 12, consists of 113,880 life hours, we'll call them, right? So the media consumes more than 40,000 of those hours. And by the way, I've done a lot of research on this. There are a lot of studies that place that number much higher, several that put that number at 50,000 hours or more. So 40,000 is the low end of the spectrum, but that's how many hours media takes of a child's life. Then, of course, there's sleep at 37,960 hours. Can't do much about sleep. Everybody's got to sleep, right? School takes up 18,200 hours. Homework consumes about 4,100 hours. And then family has 17,960 hours. The problem with that is that we don't actually have all that time to ourselves, because in addition to that, we have eating, activities, and friends. And think about it. Does our children eat every single meal with us, right? How much time do they spend in activities outside the home, on hobbies or sports or clubs or whatever? And then how much time do they spend with their friends? So that tiny slice of 17,000, almost 18,000 hours just got a lot smaller, right? And considering where a child's time is spent, perhaps that's why the church in America has been so ineffective at helping our children experience God and remain committed to Him. According to Nashua-based Lifeway research, the dropout rate for these young adults only accelerates with age. So we have 69% at age 17, 58% at age 18, and 40% at 19, right? That's how many people were still attending church, right? 69 at 17, and then it just goes down. Now, by the time these teens are in their 20s, right, only 1 in 3 remain. We're still going to church. But here's the interesting thing. This survey also found that 40% of those who did, of those who remained, said the example of their parents was why they stayed. Here's the truth. The church has not called the church, or God has not called the church to do this, right? Perhaps that's why it's not doing it well. He has called the parents to do this. So this is where we are right now. And it's something we need to consider very carefully, because the future of our children is quite literally at stake. As Winston Churchill said, there is no doubt that it is around the family and the home that all the greatest virtues, the most dominating virtues of human, are created, strengthened, and maintained. And we need to take a moment here to revisit those 5 characteristics we talked about earlier. Every child is born in the image of God with everything they need to thrive. But life often interferes with destiny. Children become wounded. Distorted belief systems are formed. And a child's belief system determines the most foundational things they believe about God, themselves, other people, and how life works. But these beliefs are often difficult to detect because of how deeply they're embedded into our perceptions, right? You've probably heard this analogy about, what if you were to sit down and explain what it's like to be wet to a fish? How do you do that? I mean, it's all they've ever known. They don't have a context to know any different. Belief systems are like that. And Vicky's going to be going into more detail about how beliefs are formed and how they create the foundation for the way a child experiences their life.
That's awesome. So we'll start with asking this question: what is a belief system? And we explain that it's kind of like the operating system of a computer. This operating system determines how the computer interacts. It interacts with the software, the hardware, the program, the user, all of it. And in much the same way, our belief system determines how we view everything. And the reason beliefs become so deeply embedded has everything to do with when they're formed. Between the ages of 0 to 4, 50% are formed. Between 5 and 8, 30%. And between 9 and 18, another 15% is formed. So this means that 95% of what we believe, our foundational beliefs about God, ourselves, other people, how life works, has been formed by the time we reach 18 years. But before you let those numbers depress you in any way, remember that whatever has been learned can be unlearned. God has literally gifted our brains with an amazing capacity to build new neuro pathways that lead to improvement and better outcomes for our lives. So we absorb our belief systems primarily through our parents and our caregivers. And because these experiences happen during the most vulnerable and impressionable times of our lives, they're deeply internalized into our belief system. And consequently, the problem isn't usually what we know, it's that so much of what we know has been distorted by grief, loss, and really the absence of someone who can help us navigate these things in healthy ways. So this assembly line is a picture of how all the parts of a belief system are put together. For better or worse, our parents, caregivers, childhoods, friends, all of our life experiences collectively build our belief system. And just like these cars, if there are any design flaws, our belief system can become a safety hazard. And that safety hazard will endanger both ourselves and those that we love. And this really explains that saying, if you've ever heard it, why hurt people hurt people. So keep in mind that as a child gets older, their responses are often just triggers from their belief systems. And this works both ways. As parents, we find ourselves, despite our best intentions, repeating familiar behaviors. We don't want to, but we don't know how to make it different because we haven't freed ourselves from these triggers. So when we engage with our kids or our spouse, these triggers jump ahead of our best intentions and prevent us from being able to connect in a way that promotes trust and safety. And unresolved grief is the biggest trigger of them all. So grief, I mentioned this earlier, but it bears repeating. Grief is conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. Think of the losses that we're experiencing even now. The loss of safety, the loss of familiar schedules, possibly the loss of a job or health. And grief does not lessen or grow smaller over time. It actually grows and touches everything. These wounds, our unresolved grief, it influences every aspect of our lives. We simply develop better and more sophisticated coping mechanisms. And some are more productive than others. Some are more socially acceptable than others, but none of them actually do anything to heal our grief and loss. And if we don't learn how to process our grief and loss, it doesn't go away. It just piles up and becomes a part of our belief system, like these rocks, right? So as these wounds accumulate, they literally become the lens through which we see everything, but in particular, how we see God. And it can be that God's too busy running the universe to care about me. How we see ourselves, that I'm worthless, I don't have value. How we see other people. From our experiences, it could be that they're not safe, I'm not going to trust. And how we think life works, that things will never get better or really change because there's something fundamentally wrong with me. Negative beliefs are just lies, but lies are incredibly powerful. That is until the moment that they are no longer believed. And you, the parent and the spouse, have been given the power and the responsibility to help your child, your loved one, see the truth about who they really are. So our children need to know that we are seeing them as they were destined to be, as God made them to be, not necessarily as they are right now. This is a great quote by author L.R. Noss. She says, "There are no bad children, there are bad choices, there are bad moments, there are bad days, there are bad situations, but there are no bad children, period." And I would even add, there are no bad people, right? But we need to remember that we are raising a person, not fixing a problem. So whatever we teach comes from our deepest beliefs. So what do you believe about your own wounds? How do you process hard things? Do you tell yourself to just get over it? To pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just soldier on? So I want you to take a moment and write down what you believe to be true about God, yourself, other people, and how life works. Just whatever comes to your mind first. Don't edit 1, 2 words, because these questions will help you get to the root of your own belief systems. Because if what we believe is distorted, then we can easily become shipwrecked on all kinds of things. And if you think of this sandbar as our relationships, as our jobs, as all these kinds of things, it's a powerful vision, because instead of connecting with people, we'll choose to isolate ourselves. Instead of being comfortable in our own skin, we'll choose to drink more or eat more or shop more, basically to do whatever we need to do in order to survive what we're feeling, because we don't know how to process it. And these distorted beliefs become behaviors, and we pass those on to our kids because we can't give them something that we don't have. And one day our kids will follow our example, not our advice. A child has to have this process modeled for them. And the only way to model it is by transparently and intentionally engaging them through our willingness to listen without minimizing, judging, or comparing. So whenever we do this, even with the best intentions, we are shutting down the child's voice and telling them that their feelings don't matter. So write this one down if you haven't yet.
Yeah.
No minimizing, judging, or comparing. And I've worked with hundreds of people over the years. And even though their stories are unique, the damage affects everyone. A parent who minimizes, judge, or compares is leaving that child vulnerable, and their spouse also, to a culture filled with anxiety, depression, and addiction, because we're not helping them discover healthy coping skills. And on the flip side, a parent who allows their child the dignity and respect of being heard without minimizing, judging, or comparing is preparing that child to become an emotionally stable adult. So when you engage with your child or your spouse, there are a couple of principles to keep in mind. For example, whenever a child shows emotion, adults have been programmed to ask them, what's wrong? And a lot of times we do that with an attitude. What's wrong?
Right.
But this just tells the child that they're wrong for feeling whatever they're feeling. There is nothing wrong with them. They're simply experiencing conflicting emotions, otherwise known as grief. A better way to help someone connect to their feelings is to change your wording. And you can ask a question like, I notice you seem to be sad. I notice you seem to be down, frustrated, angry, afraid. Would you like to talk about it? So powerful. This demonstrates how to connect to what they are feeling and gives them a safe place to express those feelings. And then we say this, let them talk. Give them space. Learn to get comfortable with extended silence. Don't fill in those silent moments. They're thinking, they're processing. For some of them, they haven't experienced this before at their house, right? If this hasn't been your culture. Patience goes a long way here. What you are saying by your action, without saying it at all, is that listening to them is the most important thing in the world to you. So just listen. Authentic listening means that you intentionally choose, and it might be looking past an outward behavior to a root of the problem. What's going on underneath? And can you look at that without being triggered yourself? Think about it. Are they feeling scared, rejected, unloved, or unworthy? Are we willing to listen to their emotions and experiences without taking it personally or becoming angry, and without attempting to fix them? Let me give you an example. This just happened this week. And Landry and I were talking, and she was really bummed about missing her prom, which was going to be tonight. The prom was tonight. She's been looking forward to it since last year. And everything got canceled. The end of the year got canceled for her. School got canceled. We meet with our co-op every Friday, and they love to be together. And she was really bummed. And we've actually had this conversation a couple times. And I could have easily said, let me give you some perspective here.
Yeah.
How about the fact that this is a pandemic and there are people losing jobs, the economy is crashing, and people are dying?
Yeah. Or sick.
Yes,
really
sick, dying. There's everything. which would have just shut down. And what am I saying to her? I'm thinking I'm supposed to give her perspective, but what I'm teaching her is so foundationally important, because by me listening and allowing her to process, because guess what, she is experiencing her life at 100%, and this is her world right now. And so what we want to say is, I can say things that might be intellectually true, but it's not emotionally helpful. When we minimize, compare, judge, we're thinking intellectually. And when we give those answers, we're shutting down the root of what they're feeling. And it's not allowing them to process in a healthy way. In fact, these things are almost always emotionally harmful. And it creates a lack of safety. And it creates that safety, that lack of safety, in the place where that child and your spouse should feel it the most, which is their home with you. It's a very important thing, because if your kids, as they grow up and they become teens or even older, they're not going to go to you with the things you really want them to, because they don't feel safe. So this process takes intentionality and time and practice. And here's another great one. Asking open-ended questions will help them connect to their feelings. Questions like, can you tell me more about that? Or statements like, I can't imagine what you must have felt or how that must feel. It gives people permission to continue talking and to sharing. And children need to feel emotionally safe in order to learn a new, different, and better way of processing their emotions. Because if they're told how they should feel, or minimized or judged for how they're feeling, they will become shut down. And this is where they become vulnerable to all sorts of self-sabotaging behaviors as they enter adulthood. And these can be a lot of things: addictions, cutting, eating disorders, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, promiscuity, looking for attention and connection in all the wrong places, right? A lack of boundaries, even antisocial behavior. The list goes on. And I'm not overstating this. It's this important. But sometimes, even if we're patient, the child just isn't able to connect to what they're feeling because they're afraid of being judged. Maybe our spouse is too. And if that happens, what we say is, go first. Obviously being aware of the child's age and what you're talking about, but share your own feelings to alleviate that child's fear of judgment. So you include those feelings words like, I'm kind of scared too. I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. Use your feeling words, and you'll give them permission to use theirs. It's a huge thing. You're literally grooming them to learn how to connect to their feelings and to process that out loud. It's a huge gift. It's a tremendous gift.
So our goal is an emotionally healthy home that promotes safety and connection. We want to have an environment where our kids want to talk, where they invite us into their world, where they trust our input. You know, you can force compliance very easily. That's not hard to do. But what we're talking about is we're talking about being invited in, right? Then we have all kinds of opportunity to speak life into our kids. So we just want to finish out our time together by giving you some principles that have transformed our lives at home. And I'm not going to, blow a bunch of sunshine here. It's actually a very simple process. However, it is definitely not an easy one. But there is good news. There is really good news. In working with kids over the last 30 years in various ways, there's 3 things I've learned that I think will take a lot of pressure off of your shoulder, especially as we're sheltering at home here. The first one is, kids don't expect perfection. They just don't. They do not expect you to always know, say, or do the right thing. They don't expect you to be Yoda dropping pearls of Jedi wisdom on them, right? You don't have to be a guru. You literally just have to be yourself. The second thing is, you have to own your stuff, because this is the trade-off for not being perfect, right? The trade-off is, own your stuff. If you make a mistake, you apologize and you mean it. And here's the thing. Not only does this build trust and create emotional safety for kids, but it also models what it looks like to take personal responsibility for your choices, right? And the third one, what I call the unforgivable sin, in quotes, right? Our kids, like I said, just want us to be ourselves. I mean, truly, right? Truly. You know that cliche, you are awesome, but you make a lousy someone else? It's so true here, right? Because if we have a church face, a home face, a public face, a work face, it's going to invite distrust and rebellion from our children. The only so-called unforgivable sin with our kids is hypocrisy. So we want to give you an example, just a few examples of what to say and also what not to say. So I'll let Vicki go first with that.
Okay, as the adult, you are the leader. So initiate the communication. So the first one is go first. Number 2 is to tell the truth about how you feel. Being honest about your own grief and about how you feel establishes an environment of trust and makes the child feel safe opening up about their feelings. But don't do it in a way that compares your wounds. Like, oh, yeah, when that happened to me, not like that. We're just saying be honest and invite them to share. Number 3 is recognize that grief is emotional. It is not intellectual. Feelings of sadness and fear are normal. Avoid the trap of asking a child what is wrong, or your spouse even, in that tone, right? Because most of the time they will say nothing.
Yeah.
Number 4, listen with your heart and not your head. We talk about being a heart with ears, right? When we listen. Allow a child to express emotions without judgment, criticism, analysis, or minimization. Number 5, remember that every child is unique. Therefore, they have a unique relationship with the loss, with what they're sharing with you right now. Number 6, be patient. Don't force the child to talk. Give them time. Plant healthy ideas about the value of sharing their feelings.
Right. All right, so now we're going to focus on 7 don'ts. These are things you do not want to do, right? So number 1 is don't feel scared, because you know what? Fear is a normal response, right? Being afraid is a normal response. Now, obviously you don't want to get stuck there, but the response is normal, right? Number 2, don't feel sad, because you know what? Sadness is also a normal response. In fact, fear and sadness are 2 of the most common feelings attached to any kind of loss, and they're an essential part of our humanity. So again, acknowledge them, right? Validate. It doesn't help us. In other words, this is like if somebody had cancer, it's like saying to them, but you should be healthy. Well, like that's not helpful at all, right? Because it doesn't negate what's going on. So we just want to be very careful about that. Number 3, don't ask the child how they're feeling. We talked about this earlier. Like adults, they're fearful of being judged or misunderstood, especially if that has happened to them multiple times in your relationship already. So automatically their response is going to be, I'm fine, even when they're not. I mean, their hair could be on fire. Oh, no, I'm fine, right? Number 4, don't act strong. Because here's how your child's going to interpret that. They're going to take your non-feeling as something that they should imitate, right? Number 5, don't compare the child's life or situations to others. Oh, comparison always minimizes feelings, and it just crushes a child's heart. Don't make promises you can't keep. This is key. Instead of saying to the child, everything's going to be okay. How do you know? You can't promise that. You don't have control of everything going on in the world, right? As we're finding out right now in this moment. Instead, say this, we'll do everything possible to stay safe, right? 7, don't forget that children are smart. I think as parents, a lot of times we forget how smart our kids actually are. So treat them and their feelings with the same respect and dignity you would want to receive from others. And lastly, I just want to leave you with this final piece of parenting advice. This is from Jennifer, age 26, who reminds us that being a parent isn't stressful. Yeah, love Jennifer. She's a sweetie. Anyways, we at the beginning said that we wanted to kind of save your questions in the Q&A, and if there's anything that we can answer, we promise to stay on here. As long as there are questions, we will stay on here answering them. So I did want to let you know, though, that you've probably already noticed by now in the course of our presentation the importance of us as parents dealing with our own wounds, our own lives, in order to have any chance of helping our children deal with theirs. So if you would like a free copy of our ebook, Building an Emotionally Healthy Home, you can text SAFE HOME to 1-678-506-7543. We'll leave that up for a second in case you want to take a picture of that and so forth. But in the meantime, if you have any questions at all, we, again, love them. We want to make sure that we answer them. We didn't do this so that we could film ourselves talking. We did this because we really want to make sure that we're serving a need that you as parents have. So we'll just kind of turn our attention over here to the panel and see what we got.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you so much. Yes. It's very different doing this online and not in a room with people.
Yeah.
So it's
I definitely like the people better.
It's fun.
You know what I mean? Like when you're like around physical people rather than, virtual people.
But it's so awesome that you're all here. We thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we go definitely deeper. We have a lot of great information in the ebook. And there also is a course called Building an Emotionally Healthy Home that you can get access to through that.
It kind of goes over some of the things we talked about today, but it goes in a lot deeper, and it just gives you an opportunity to kind of just go one step further into that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Paula's asking if it will be available for others to watch later. I'm not really sure. That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
I'm not sure if we didn't really think about the after, if we should post this maybe on Facebook. That's a possibility. We could
record.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So we could post it later on Facebook. Something just happened. I don't know. Anyway, yes, that would be very cool. Thank you. And we appreciate it. Definitely. Yeah. So we'll probably do that, post that on our big PK4L page.
Yeah, as long as it's being recorded, and B, we can figure out how to, you just got to figure out how to download it and then upload it.
Yeah, and we'll put it on our big PK4L page, which is not private, so it can be shareable.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
I know that you have a lot of things you could be doing with your time. So we just appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us. And, if let's say there's something that occurs to you later on, like, oh, I wish I would have asked that or whatever, you know what? You can go to PK4L Tribe. That's our public Facebook group, and just sign and follow, reach out, and then put your question on there. I mean, because we check that regularly. So if we see your question pop up there, we'll be happy to answer that. Like I said, our main objective here is just to answer whatever questions that you have. So in any case.
Hang on, I think there's.
Oh, is there one?
Oh, okay, then we're trying to figure out this whole thing. Yeah. Laura, love the reminder that when you are talking with your kids, asking questions is to help them process their emotions, not to give them a perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very true. Yeah. And what's amazing that I've seen, and I've seen this in grief recovery with people, as they get to process these things, their perspective shifts. They're able to see bigger and beyond their own wounds, because that healing, as that happens, gives them that perspective. And that's the same what we could do for our kids, is as they get to process that out loud, they're able to see things in a different way.
Yeah.
Oh, Noi is on here too. Great to see you, Noi.
Hey, Noi.
Thank you, Tad.
Thank you, Tad.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. So any questions, lay them there or put them on PK4L. And otherwise, guys, we loved spending time with you, and we look forward to doing this more often, although hopefully it'll be, in person.
Or online, and just not where we're not able to leave the house. But love you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Love you guys. Talk to you later.
Bye.